In this lesson, we're going to learn how to find the areas and perimeters of parallelograms and triangles. Right? The first one that we're going to learn about is the area of a parallelogram. Remember, a parallelogram is an object that has two sets of parallel lines. Okay? You have two sets of parallel lines. Now, these can include ones that look like this, and it can also include things like rectangles, okay? Rectangles and squares, okay? And so on, okay? But you have to have opposite sides that are parallel. Okay, so to find the area of a parallelogram, you take your base, okay? Take your base and you multiply it times the height. Just base times height. That's all there is to it. All right? You're also going to be asked to find the perimeter or the distance around an object. You do that by adding the lengths of all the sides of the object, not just the ones that are labeled, but all of them. Okay? The perimeter of a parallelogram can also be found by using the formula perimeter is equal to 2 times the length plus 2 times the width. Okay? Pause the video and copy this into your notes. All right, so the first example says find the perimeter and the area of the parallelogram. Well, we know that opposite sides are congruent and are parallel. So we know that this is, if we find the perimeter, okay, we're looking for the perimeter first. So we know this is 20. We know this is 20, okay? This 12 here is something we're going to use in a minute, but the entire length here of this whole side is the same thing as the top one, so that's 32. So perimeter is 2 times the length, or 2 times 20 plus 2 times the width, which is 2 times 32. If we do the math, that's 40 plus 64, which is 104 inches is the distance around that. Now, to find the area or the amount of space that it covers, you have to say area is equal to base times height. All right. Well, the base here is going to be 32. All right. So that's equal to 32 times the height. Well, the height is this part right here, which we don't know what that is because we're not given to it. We're not given that. But if we look here, let me erase that circle there. If we look here, we know that this is a right triangle. Okay, this is a right triangle right here. All right, we know that whenever we see a right triangle, we know that we can say a squared plus b squared is equal to c squared using the Pythagorean theorem. And we're given, remember, a and b are the legs which form the right angle, okay, and c is the hypotenuse. So this c is going to be 20 squared, a squared, we can say that's what we're looking for, plus 12 squared is equal to 20 squared. All right, so now when we do the math, we end up with a squared is equal to, not equal to, a squared plus 144 is equal to 400, because 12 squared, 12 times 12 is 144, 20 times 20 is 400. We subtract 144 from both sides. All right, use your calculator. All right, we go 400 minus 144. We end up with a squared is equal to 256. And we're going to take the square root of 256 to get a, because we take the square root of a squared, that cancels with that. Square root of this, it gives us 16. So we know that the height here, now, this height here is 16, all right? So we take 32 times base of height, 32 times 16, all right? We plug that into our calculator. And we end up with 512. So the area is equal to 512 inches squared, okay, or square inches. And the reason it's square inches, it's always going to be square units of measure when we're finding the area, because this is 32 inches, 16 inches, and inches times inches is inches squared. All right. The next parallelogram is the same type of problem. Okay, so we have, and so we know that this over here is 17. This down here, the entire thing is 27. All right. All right. So we have the perimeter 2 times the width plus 2 times the length. All right. So that's 2 times 17 plus 2 times 27. 2 times 17 is 34 plus 2 times 27 is 54. When we do the math, 34 and 54 is 88 meters. All right. Area is base times the height. All right. Base is 27. The height we don't know yet, because that's the distance from here to here. We're given 8, so we have a squared plus b squared is equal to c squared. So that's 8 squared plus b squared is equal to 17 squared. 8 squared is 64 plus b squared is equal to 17 squared. I don't know what 17 squared is. So we're going to plug it in. 17 squared is 289. All right, we're going to subtract 64 from both sides. So b squared is equal to 225. Take the square root of both sides. Take the square root of both of that, and you end up with b is equal to 15. So we have 27 times 15. So we're going to say 27 times 15, and we end up finding out that the area is equal to 405 square meters. Okay? All right. This next parallelogram is a rhombus, and you know it's a rhombus because all of the sides are the same measure. All right. So this is 24, this is 24, and this is 24. All right. So the easiest way to do that is to find the perimeter is 24 times 4, because we could add them all together, but remember, repeated addition is just simply the same as multiplication. 4 times 4 is 16. 2 times 4 is 8, plus 1 is 9. So the perimeter is 96 inches. All right. Now, all right. So now, all right. So we can notice here that this triangle here, we're not given the length of this. We're not given the length of this side right here. Okay. We're not given the length of that side, but we know we are given this 60-degree angle. So that means we know that this down here is a 60-degree angle. We have a 90-degree angle here, and that means this is a 30-degree angle, which is a special triangle that we haven't learned about yet, called a 30-60-90, a 30-60-90 triangle. Okay, and so one of the things that this 30, 60, 90 triangle does is that it says that the shortest side is always half the length of the longest side, or the hypotenuse. So that means we know that this short side right over here, this is always going to be, that's going to be 12, okay, because this is 24. It's going to be half of that, all right? And we can use that to figure this, and this would be square root of 3 times 12. All right, and we can do it that way, or we can do it the way that we know, which is a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Okay. So we know that we have a squared is 12 squared plus b squared is equal to 24 squared. 12 squared is 144 plus b squared is equal to 24 squared, which is 576. All right. And we're going to take that 576 and we're going to subtract 144 from it, okay, which gives us 432, okay. So we subtract the 144, all right, b squared is equal to 432. Take the square root of both sides. We end up with b is equal to 20.78 or 20.8 square inches. Okay. Now I said something about up here about this side being square root of 3 times 12. Well, if we do that, if we say 3, take the square root of 3 times that times 12, and we end up with 20.78 or 20.8, which is exactly the same measure that we had gotten previously. All right, and that's we'll later on we may learn more about the 30, 60, 90 triangle. Okay. All right. The second part of this lesson is finding the area of a triangle. And to find the area of the triangle, you take the base times the height and divide it by 2. All right. Or you could say 1/2 of the base times the height. Either way, it's all the same exact thing. All right. And a couple different two different postulates to go along with this whole area is that the area of a postulate 11.1 says the area addition postulate, the area of a region is the sum of all of its non-overlapping parts. So in other words, if you have several different shapes, the area of that entire thing is finding the area of each shape and then adding them all together. All right. And then the second postulate just says that if two figures are congruent, then they're going to have the same area. All right, so let's do several examples. All right, find the perimeter in the area of the shaded triangle. Okay, the shaded triangle. So the shaded triangle, it says that we have a right angle here, so we can find the hypotenuse here. So we need to find the hypotenuse in order to find the perimeter. A squared plus b squared is equal to c squared. So that's 12 squared plus 20 squared is equal to c squared. 144 plus 400 equals c squared. And so we end up with 544 is equal to c squared. When we take the square root of both of those, we find out that the square root of 544 is 23.3 is equal to c. All right. So this 23.3. All right. So we can just find the perimeter. We're going to say 12 plus 20 plus 23.3 is equal to the perimeter, right? So that's 32. Well, we can just use a calculator rather than doing it in our head. 12 plus 20 plus 23.3, 55.3. So the perimeter of the shaded part of this triangle is 55.3 inches. All right. To find the area, you'd say the base times the height. Area is the base times the height divided by 2. Right. So that's 12 times 20 divided by 2. 12 times 20 is 240 divided by 2, which is 120. The other way you would be is you could say 1/2 of the base times the height, okay, which would be 1/2 of 12 times 20. All right, half of 12 is 6 times 20, which is 120, which is exactly the same thing, and that's square inches. Okay. All right. Next triangle. This is a triangle that has two. The shaded triangle is a isosceles triangle. It has two sides that are the same. It doesn't really matter, but here this would be a case where you're going to find it easier to multiply the two together and then divide it by 2 in order to find the area. But first we need to find the perimeter. So you end up with a squared plus b squared is equal to c squared. So 17 squared plus 17 squared is equal to c squared. 17 squared is 289. And 289 plus 289 is 578. And if you take the square root of that, you end up with 24.04. Okay, or we'll just say 24 is equal to c squared. All right, so that would be 24 here. So you have 17 plus 17 plus 24 is equal to 58. Okay, so this would not be c squared, just be c. So the perimeter is equal to 58 inches. All right? And So for the to find the area is equal to base times the height divided by 2, which we know is 17 times 17 divided by 2. We already figured out that 17 times 17 is 289 divided by 2. 289 divided by 2 is equal to 144.5 square inches. Okay? Our last example is an example of a triangle that actually has the height on, has the height on the outside of the triangle. Okay, and which makes no difference as far as finding the area. Now, it also really doesn't make a whole lot of difference as far as finding the length of this side. Well, actually it does, because now the we have to use the Pythagorean theorem twice, because we have to use it for this one, and then we're going to have to use it for the great big one too. Okay, so we know that the right triangle here is actually that one is what we're going to use for this. So that would be a squared plus b squared is equal to c squared. Okay, so this would be 17 squared plus, now we got to combine the 15 and the 25, so that would be 40 squared is equal to c squared. 17 squared, we remember that from the previous problem, was 289, plus 40 squared is 1,600 is equal to c squared. Okay, so we're going to add the 289 to that, is 1889. Okay, so this is 1889 is equal to c squared. Take the square root of it, is 43.5. All right, so 43.5 inches is equal to c. So this is 43.5 is the length of that long side. Okay, then we're going to do the same thing for this short side here. Right, so we're going to say 17 squared plus 15 squared is equal to c squared. 17 squared again is 289. 15 squared is 225. Okay, add the two sides together. 514 is equal to c squared. Take the square root of it, and that would be 22.7 is equal to c. So the length of this side is 22.7. All right, so now all we have to do to find the perimeter of the shaded triangle is to add up all of the side lengths. So we're going to say 22.7 plus 43.5 plus the 25, because that's just the shaded part. And we end up with the perimeter is equal to 91.2 centimeters. Okay? All right. So then simply to find the area is equal to the base times the height divided by 2. Now we're finding the area of the shaded part, so the base is 25 times 17 divided by 2. 25 times 17 is 425 divided by 2, which gives us 212.5 square centimeters. Okay, so that's the area. Area is 212.5 square centimeters. All right, so that does it for this lesson. Make sure that you have all the notes copied down, and make sure you ask questions if you don't understand something. We'll talk to y'all later.